Okay, y'all, I am so excited. Welcome, welcome, welcome to our Black to the Future Action Fund Digital Advocacy Day. Now, we are joined by two illustrious guests, but I want to just start off by talking a little bit about the context for why we're doing this event in the first place. Despite the pandemic and rampant voter suppression, Black communities turned out in historic numbers to deliver legislative and governing power for the Biden-Harris administration. That governing power came with a mandate for change. We didn't stand in long lines and risk our health for politicians. We did it for us. We did it for our futures. And we have a policy mandate for our elected leaders. And our mandate is that our leaders be bold and unwavering in their commitment to tackling the most pressing policy and social challenges of our generation. This is why we developed the Build Back Bolder agenda, a mandate for the Biden-Harris administration. It is a policy mandate that offers a framework for how it is that we make our communities whole. It's a roadmap for helping to translate broad commitments for racial equity into bold action and bold rules with tangible results, and it comes from listening to all of you. Over 40,000 of you already have endorsed this mandate, and one thing is clear: we are united in our call for justice, for fairness, and for dignity across healthcare, climate justice, economic justice, and of course, racial justice. Now, 6 months into this administration, we have an incredible opportunity to shape and influence the largest infrastructure package in decades. And I'm not just talking about physical infrastructure like bridges and roads. I'm talking about human infrastructure, all of the things that we need to live healthy and whole lives. Things like healthcare that includes the care economy, right? Childcare, elder care, early childhood education, things like affordable and safe and quality housing, things like good jobs and good benefits, and finally dealing proactively and aggressively with climate change. This is our opportunity to rewrite some of the rules that we know have been rigged against our communities for generations, but we know it's not going to happen without a fight. So that is why we have invited Representative Nikema Williams and Miami Workers Center Executive Director Sandra Denis to speak with us today. They're on the front lines every single day, and they're here to share with us their assessment of where things currently stand, where they're headed, and what is needed to secure the biggest, boldest legislative package as possible for our communities. So let's go ahead and get into it. Welcome, Representative Williams, and welcome, Santra. Representative Williams, let's start with you. So we know that there's two infrastructure packages that are being proposed and negotiated. There's the American Families and American Jobs Plans. We've also been hearing a ton about the process, everything from filibuster reform to budget reconciliation. All of those are big words for how bills actually become laws. So we need your help breaking it down. Can you give us a crash course on the legislative process and where each of these two proposals stand? Can you also share some top lines about what's included in each one?
Absolutely, Alicia, and I'm so glad to be here with you today because, there is no better person that I like making good trouble with than you and my friends who are doing this work every day for the people, because that's what it's about. It's about doing this work for the people. Y'all, I am Congresswoman Nikema Williams, and I proudly serve Georgia's 5th Congressional District. And I can't underscore enough the opportunities that are available through President Biden's American Jobs Plan, but there is so much more that we all need to be talking about and making a reality. So I'm glad to cut through some of the noise and talk about what it's going to take from all of us to get the infrastructure investments done that is truly bold and visionary for our country. As you said, this is a once in a generation opportunity to improve every part of our infrastructure, from mass transit to broadband to the care infrastructure, so that families can get back to work. And I would venture to say that some people are going to try and tell you what should be infrastructure, what is not. And some people think that it should only be roads and bridges. And some people once didn't think that mass transit was infrastructure, but we evolve as a country. When you know better, Alicia, you do better. And we know better in this country. And so we have to do better on behalf of the American people. So with President Biden and my colleagues in Congress on one side of the aisle, we are pushing to make sure that our recovery from this pandemic is inclusive, and it doesn't just get us back to where we were before the pandemic, because that still leaves so many of our communities behind. There's so much at stake, y'all. We still lag behind the rest of the country with so many critical parts of infrastructure. When you think about things like paid family leave, you think that in this country, the wealthiest country in the world, we still don't guarantee paid family leave for workers in this country. So that is something that we have to make sure that it's continued to be elevated in the conversation. And not everyone in Congress is ready to work with us. There are so many lawmakers right now, my colleagues that were elected by people back home in their districts, that are rallying against thinking big. They say that we should just focus on things like roads and bridges and the voices against progress. Y'all, they're strong. And that's where we come in, because I know after what I just saw in the last election cycle, our voices are stronger. There are more of us who really want to move our country forward, and we have to do the work. So, as you said, the people who chose Democratic majorities to secure a better future, change doesn't just stop with changing leadership. Democracy doesn't start and stop on election day. It requires sustained engagement from all of us, outside of Congress and inside of Congress, to make sure that we get to the finish line, because we don't build power for power's sake. We build power so that we can make sure that we're building communities that have what they need to be successful. So every day I am out loud and on purpose for the American Jobs Plan and making sure that we actually represent the American people. I serve on the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee, and there is, some people will have you to believe that there's only one body in the legislative branch of government, the United States Senate, but we're doing our part in the House as well. And we are making sure that as we are moving two concurrent proposals forward, that we are maintaining our autonomy as a body in the House, and anything that is not in the original package that is going through with the traditional infrastructure, we are making sure that we already have the commitments and to get things like the care funded and to get early childhood education and things like that we're not even thinking about with the child tax credits that's starting this month in July. Families across the country are going to get a check every single month for children in their household, which will literally cut childhood poverty in half. But yet we have some people who are like, oh, but it's going to go away in 2 years. How do we as a nation cut childhood poverty in half and then say, oh, but it's fine, we can just go back to where we were before? That's not going to happen on my watch. And so I am glad to have people like y'all who are co-conspirators for justice with me to make sure that we are truly representing the people.
Congresswoman, you're incredible, and thank you for all of the work that you do to fight for our communities. Santra, let's go with you. You know, your organization is doing incredible work in Florida, specifically in Miami, around many of the issues that are being addressed in these packages, including workers' rights and housing justice. Now, with the upcoming expiration of the CDC's eviction moratorium on July 31st, we are expecting that eviction waves across the country will occur, including in Florida. So can you share your assessment with us of what we can expect on the local and state level if we fail to pass legislation that adequately addresses the housing crisis and provides protection and resources? What specifics around housing are you hoping to see in these upcoming packages?
Absolutely, and thanks so much for having us. Particularly in Florida and in Miami. I think I want to say that I'm a Floridian, born and raised. And so there are things that we can say that we don't like when other folks say about us. We live specifically, Miami Worker is in the city of Miami, one of the poorest communities in poor in dollars, but rich in culture and in people. But again, one of the most rent burdened cities in Miami-Dade County. And so you have over 50% of folks who live in this community who are not owning their homes, but also make little to none in terms of minimum wage. If you all remember in the previous election cycle, it actually has to be a ballot initiative to raise the minimum wage in the state of Florida. And so you have the context is that rent burden, one of the most expensive cities to live in, as well as wages that don't necessarily reflect or match what it costs to live here. And a huge hospitality industry that, again, is a driver of low wages in our community. And so when you think about people who work in the hotels, our ag workers, many of those who really were hit hard during this COVID pandemic, these are the folks who really are going to be tremendously impacted by the moratorium being lifted. For us, Miami Worker Center has historically done housing work. We're super concerned and we've been fighting the good fight to make sure that people can stay in their homes. What we want to see is landlord accountability. What we've seen is landlords are not wanting to participate in the programs. And so as dollars are coming down from the federal government, landlords are like opting out not to take the dollars to pay back rent. And what we want to see is that there has to be a push for landlords to have to participate if they want to evict their tenants. We also want to see an ability for folks in Florida right now. You don't have to have any kind of mediation to go into the courthouse. And right now you have to have all your back due rent and able to even go before the judge. It has to be in the registry system. And so many folks don't even have the opportunity to go fight their fight before the judge. And so we want to see mediation, that people have to get together with their tenants, with a mediator to discuss what's happening before they're even able to be evicted. And we don't believe in evictions. We believe that housing is a human right. We believe that everyone has a right in the wealthiest country in the world to be housed. And we got to figure it out. And so the dollars have to come and they have to come faster. There also has to be landlord accountability. There also has to be issues around retaliation when tenants are speaking up against issues in their buildings. And so rats, mildew, things that we've seen, no one would want to live in those conditions. And I would, be remiss if I didn't even mention what's happening in Surfside in Miami-Dade County, where a building collapsed. And we know that not only does it have to do with climate change, but it also has to do with landlord accountability. When folks are paying their dollars, are they able to ensure that the buildings are fixed? And so all of that, I think, not only the funding, not only the amazing policy, but we want to see the accountability and enforcement and making sure that people do participate because the funds are available. And if they don't participate, what are the repercussions for them as well?
Mm-hmm. This was so helpful. I'm so glad that we got a sense of what is happening and what's needed. And now I want to move into a conversation about where we go from here and some of the key opportunities for our communities to influence what's going on federally so that we can have change in our states and in our cities. So Representative Williams, let's start with you and let's talk about the timeline. The House and the Senate are currently in recess with both bodies returning to DC next week. And you'll have a few weeks in Washington before the August recess. Given these kinds of constraints, the next several weeks seem to be really critical in the negotiating process to help ensure that Black communities' priorities are front and center. Now, based on our polling, we know that monthly stimulus checks, housing protections, and a fair recovery from the pandemic are top policy priorities for Black communities. What advice do you have for our supporters who are watching right now, who want to get involved and have their voices heard? What can they do in these critical weeks leading up to the development of a final package?
So I'm an organizer, y'all. So this question, I am so glad that you're asking me this because people need to hear from you. Your members of Congress, members of the House, and members of the Senate need to hear from you to make sure that your voice is heard. You keep calling. If you feel like you're getting on their nerves, then you're doing the right thing. Keep calling so that they hear from you and understand that these are priorities for people's daily lives. This is literally life and death for some people, and we need to explain it as such. Well, and I also need you to, like, for the monthly checks, make sure that you are already signed up or checking your account to make sure that you're getting your monthly child care tax credit checks that will start on July 15th. I can't stress that enough. So I want to make sure that we're taking advantage of the opportunities are there and pushing to expand so that we are getting what we need. The other thing, Alicia, we're going to be talking about 2 proposals that are moving forward. And I want people to be clear when they're calling that you're going to hear a lot about reconciliation. What does that mean? So we're going to have one bill that is moving through to put investments in action. And it's the bipartisan infrastructure package that is the stuff that you've always considered infrastructure, but it's 2021. So we're reimagining this and we're actually getting people what they need. And so through the reconciliation process, that's the procedure that allows us to pass legislation that is strictly related to things like funding and taxes. And we can do that with a simple majority. We don't need 60 votes or to deal with the filibuster, which is a whole nother story that we can talk about if you want to, but we don't need to change the filibuster rule to do something through reconciliation, but there has to be funding proposals attached to it or tax implications. So using this tool allows us to meet the moment for where we are in this country and make sure that we're enacting the bold and visionary policies that we know our communities deserve. So we need to call, email if you can't call, and keep calling and emailing, and reach out to organizations that are in line with the things that you support, and understand if they're having a virtual lobby day or advocacy day and joining in, so that it makes a huge difference. I love all of y'all, but it makes a huge difference when I hear from people that live right here in Atlanta. And that is the norm for so many other members of Congress. So make sure that you're telling your personal story and giving your feedback on why this is important to you. I often use the personal stories of constituents to talk about why I'm doing this work and why this is so critical to me and why I fight the way that I do, because I know that my communities are depending on me, but I need to hear from you so that I have those stories, because your stories are beyond powerful and I want to be your voice and I want to share them. And we need more people outside of Congress coming inside of Congress so that we can share those stories. So keep calling, and sharing your stories because they're powerful.
And then there's a question too in the chat about any information on how you sign up for the checks.
Yes, I can put that in the chat. So it's through the IRS. And if you haven't filed your taxes, have no fear, because you can still get your checks if you have not filed your taxes. And this, I mean, it is literally game changing for families with young children at home who will receive a check every month starting July 15th. So I will put that in the chat. And if you have problems getting it, even after you sign up or check your status, you can always reach out to your member of Congress who should have somebody just said, what check? The child care tax credit, where every child in this country under the age of 17 will receive a check every month. Like, families will start receiving them July 15th. I'm going to put the link in the chat.
Okay. Santra, we know that your organization is running currently successful eviction defense and tenant rights campaigns. So talk to us a little bit about, if our supporters can only take one action, what do you suggest to help move forward changes around evictions and housing protections?
One action, I have so many.
Give them all.
Stand with your neighbors. We have a personal story that just actually happened. The judge refused to uphold the federal eviction moratorium, didn't take the CDC declaration, and really was in pathway to evict one of our tenants that we've been building with. And the Miami Worker Center, with our members, her neighbors, showed up and really held her down in front of her home. The newspaper outlets came out, heard her story. She had lost her husband earlier this year. She's a single mother with 3 children. And all of a sudden, the landlord wanted to negotiate and wanted to participate in the ERAP program, which is the dollars from the federal government. And so we know that when we stand up for ourselves and for our communities and our neighbors, people listen. And there's a narrative about tenants that is very much untrue, that people don't want to pay their bills, that people just want to hand out. That is not the communities that we know. We know our communities are hardworking. We know that they do want to pay their bills and they want to do right by their families. And right now, this is a system that has failed them. And the federal government has stepped in to provide dollars to make sure that people have what they need. And it's bad actors in our communities who are not participating. So we have to stand up for each other. And that's what I would say, stand up. Even if it's not you, stand up for your neighbors, stand up for your cousins, talk to people about what they're experiencing, because a lot of folks are suffering in silence. They are afraid, they have anxiety. And so that's what we would say that people should do. Stand up, contact everyone, tweet them all, starting from federal to, city commissioners, make sure that they're in the know and that they can show up for our people. Because ultimately it's our dollars at work for us, and it needs to come and make sure that when we are in need, which is right now, that we can have all the resources that we need available to make sure that our communities are safe.
That's right.
That's what I would say.
All right. Well, thank you so much to all of our special guests and supporters for joining us today. And a very, very special thank you to all of our state and national campaign partners, including the Frontline, Dignity and Power Now, Georgia Stand Up, Make It Work Nevada, Black Women's PAC Texas, New Georgia Project Action Fund, and of course, Miami Workers Center. We have incredible opportunities ahead of us, y'all, and we are uniquely positioned to influence this legislation for the benefit of all of our communities, but we can't do it without you. We cannot do it without you. So as we've discussed, the next couple of weeks are critical for this legislation. And here at the Black to the Future Action Fund, we're going all in. Phone banks, text banks, social media campaigns, and in-person actions, masked up, of course. We are leaving no stone unturned in this fight for justice and equity, because we have a mandate to deliver and we expect results. There's no time like the present, y'all, so let's get started. If you're able to call and email your representative today, please join the Zoom link that we've been dropping in the chat throughout this event and that we emailed you. We've also put links in here for how to contact your specific representative. Our political and organizing teams are waiting to help walk you through the process. So please join us as we call and email our legislators and share what we have on the horizon for our summer of action. Thank you again for joining us today. And we're so stoked to see you on the other line. Couple of other things before we wrap on. Well, we just did our Facebook Live event. We're also going to be doing some phone banks where we're driving hundreds of calls and emails into congressional offices across the country. You can sign up for that with the Zoom link in the chat. We are doing a Black Mandate text bank. So texting people in key states and asking them to join the fight by signing on to our mandate and calling their representatives. And then also, y'all, we need to hear your stories, okay? So please, please, please join us. We can't wait to be in this fight with you. Let's get it popping, y'all. We got some things to win. Thanks, y'all.